Welcome. This is Cop Talk Uncuffed with your host, Jax and Ritz. Join us as we discuss current police issues and work on building solid community relationships. We will have news, interviews, answer questions, and more. You don't have to have a badge to listen. We're here for everyone. Now, here are your hosts.
So going back to the bad cops, bad people, we all agree that we don't want them in the profession. How do we get them out? What do we do? How's that work?
I mean, you guys are police officers. What do you do?
Well, there's kind of a stigma that is attached when you speak up about things that you don't agree with, and then you become known as a problem.
I feel like, as an outsider look in, I've never been a law enforcement officer, would never want to be. I could not I can't fathom all this stuff that you have to be ready for at a drop of a dime. I find the brotherhood, so it's one thing that I really know that they stress, like the brotherhood, you kind of in this together, got your six, thin blue line. People are proud to be police officers. The good ones are very proud. I mean, you wear them, you can tell. I say that they all have the same haircut. You can tell they're a police officer when they have the, light 0.5 up top,
what
0
about
at the
the
bottom.
faux hawk?
Oh, yeah, the faux hawk. I don't know about the faux hawk. But Jax has luscious hair too. But most of them have the cop, cop haircut. And I think, I see the brotherhood, and then you don't want to believe that one of your colleagues is a bad police officer or a bad cop. I mean, most people want to see the good in people. The other problem that I've seen, and I know this from working as conflict counsel and being counsel for unions, most police officers or police departments have unions. Pursuant to the union contracts, they're usually entitled to either a rep or an attorney if there's an IA investigation or internal investigation or there's some kind of issue. And doing that in my practice, I've noticed that, like you said, it's kind of like you're flagged out. Are you going to be, are you going to be the narc? Like snitches get stitches kind of thing. And you're in this inner turmoil where you want to report it because the saying, no one hates a bad cop more than a good cop, because the bad cops are the ones that put everyone's life and positions in jeopardy. We already established that you have minimal training for the kind of stuff that you're going to have to deal with. You have shitty pay. Do you really want to have a hostile work environment because, you're just trying to do the right thing? So I think I don't want to say even turn a blind eye. I think a lot of police officers struggle with this turmoil, but they're like, I have all this stuff on my plate. Do I add on just people hating me? Or if a cop's going to be a bad cop and do shady stuff or illegal stuff to people they don't know, you don't think they're going to be screwing with you? I mean, you're kind of staring the bull in the eyes. I mean, you're like, bring it on. Are you? And the other thing that I see is that, so then you get this one person who's like, this is it, this is wrong, and they stand up. And then all the other people that they've talked to at the water cooler, car side by side and stuff, they're all like, yeah, this is, bullshit, we need to stand up. And then they file the grievance or whatever, and then he turns around and no one's there, and everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be drug into it. So I think it's really, the way to get bad cops out is by flushing them out. And how you do that is internally. You have to have people willing to say, enough's enough, this is bullshit, you don't have all this union stuff. And we kind of talked about it, do we hold cops to a higher accountability? Most police departments have drug-free workplaces. Listen, if you're abusing drugs, you shouldn't be a police officer. If you have a gambling problem and you end up taking money, you shouldn't be a police officer. Resign, get your shit together and then come back. I don't necessarily think you should ever not be it, but I think that, there's a lot of cover-ups. I think, departments don't want to have any more headaches than they have to be. I think the big thing that I say in my practice is that we deal with the fires, and we, if it's just smoking, we'll handle it later. Right now we're dealing with fires. I think departments, they're overworked, underpaid, they're minimal staff, people are working overtime. I think they just don't want to have to deal with it. And the moment that, you can report it, but it eventually goes up to the highest person, and whoever that is, whether it's your lieutenant or chief or commissioner or whatever, it's going to eventually land on someone's lap, and they don't want to have to deal with it. You're making tough decisions, and it's just kind of, I think police departments get locked into, once something is reported, if we fire them or we publicly reprimand them, we're admitting wrongdoing, and it's making the worst climate. So everyone kind of turns the blind eye, and that's how you have to get rid of. But the problem is, the only way to flush out these cops is by doing it internally.
I think sometimes the issue you have is when you find someone bad and you take it up the chain of command. Sometimes the chain of command already has that person's back, and it's dead on arrival. Unfortunately, that is the case sometimes in certain scenarios. So at that point, what do? You've reported it to who you have to report it to, but that person already has that officer's back. I mean, you've done your job, but what happens then?
You gotta wash your hands at that point.
Yeah.
And you do see that, and like any profession, but I notice a lot of police officers either follow in some footsteps of someone's family, so maybe they might no longer be with the department, but if, Joe Schmo or Uncle Joe or Daddy was something, they kind of say, oh, well, you know what, or they try to flush it, or they say it, and going back to what I said before, there's 3 bad cops. One of the cops, I had a trial, essentially tried to put someone under arrest for a minor misdemeanor, which in the state of Ohio, you cannot put under custodial arrest, it's a summons. He grabs the guy steps back, and he then tasers him in the face. And so
Did he say, in the face?
In the face? No, he said, stop resisting, as my guy was convulsing on the cement. So stop resisting and, I guess an unlawful arrest. So we imparted discovery, attorneys get police officer files. So I want to know what's dealing with, and I already knew that this guy was, for lack of a better term, an asshole. And so I'm going through this, and I've seen that this guy has had, in the matter of 3 years, 12 complaints, use of forces. I see that he had to undergo, it got so bad, the last time they made him get a psychological exam. And in this exam, the last sentence says, this person should not be a police officer, he's not mentally fit. And he got a 3-day suspension. And I was like, are you kidding me? I read it again, and I'm looking at it, and, clients' files are confidential, so I had co-counsel on the case, and I called the co-counsel, and I'm like, read this and make sure I'm reading it right. I was tracking the names, I'm like, mate, this couldn't be. 2 years prior to this incident, you had an order from the department to get a psych eval as part of a disciplinary action, where the guy said, this guy should not be a police officer, he's a problem. And he had a 3-day suspension.
So does that go back to the union representation?
It goes back to the department being afraid to hand out discipline, because they think that it means that they're with the qualified immunity, that they're admitting a liability, and they're admitting it, and they don't. Everyone wants it's CYA, cover your ass. But instead of dealing with the problem, you might get a little flack, you might get a little flack, or you might get a little news blip in the news, but it's over with. But when you consistently have the same officers doing the same thing, you're eventually going to get someone who kills someone, and then you're national news.
Right.
So, but and that's what I said. I read it, and I just remember being like, I can't believe this is. Then they willingly handed it over.
So you said you knew 3. And you obviously interact with multiple police officers every day, so that's a pretty good percentage.
Most police officers are phenomenal. I actually am very good friends. I actually get police officers. I have most of their cell phones, so if I get it, especially if I get a case, you know, the client comes in, I'm talking about it, and I'm seeing the police officer, I can tell if they get charged with obstruction of justice, and I look at who arrested them, I'm like, you were an asshole. Because this charge is, the only reason they charge you with this is because they literally wanted to not do paperwork and you would not shut your mouth. Like, so, and I text them and I'm like, hey, what's happening? And they tell you this sob story and all this stuff. And the police officer's like, did they tell you that they had pot? That I said, I'm not going to write you the citation, but stomp it out and don't smoke pot if you don't have a prescription card and you can't have an OVI. And I let them park their unregistered or late registered car. And they just kept running their mouth, and finally I had to arrest them because I couldn't de-escalate it anymore. And you're like, no, they did not say that to me. They said you racially profiled them, or you were being rude to them, or you poured them over because they had a crappy car. And they're like, none of the above, but I also did this, this, and this, but it wasn't relevant to the arrest report because I arrested him for this. So most police officers have one goal: go to work, come home safe. What happens in between them is their job. It stays as their job. They don't care. I mean, they did their job, and we use the OVI a lot. Most police officers, like, if I got someone home safe from driving, OVI, I don't care if it gets amended or dismissed or pled down to, because I save lives. They're not going to hurt themselves. They're not going to hurt someone else. What happens with it 2 months, 3 months, a year from now in court, doesn't matter, because it's not.
I would agree that most cops feel that way. You know, I know when I go to court, you know, I don't really care what happens to the person after the arrest was already made, you know, unless the guy was a complete asshole or, you know, something along that lines. And I think that goes, like, you know, if a defense attorney always sees me and says, and I say, you know, do whatever you want to do, make whatever deal you want to do.
For sure.
And then the one time out of 100, I'm like, no, there's no deals.
Yeah.
I think the defense attorney knows, all right, well, something's up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know when I go to court, I'm always for helping everybody out.
Yeah, and most police officers, and then, you know, I mean, I get in fights with police officers, and I just told a police officer 2 days ago to remember his pay grade, and kicked him out of the office of the prosecutor.
Wow. All right, wow. Give him the
I made
business.
friends. And then there was another time where the officer was taking it really personally, and he had his canine search, and I subpoenaed the canine as a witness under Ohio law, and then asked for a separation of witnesses. So I made the dog sit in one room and the handler sit in the other,
Wow.
which kind of
Wow.
made everyone mad. But
Seeing a whole new side of you.
oh yeah, I can be aggressive if I need to. But most of the time, I call the police. And the nice thing is that you call the police and they're like, I don't even know who you're talking about. And then you say them, they're like, I don't know who you're talking about. And then you get to court and they're like, I don't know. But when you do have a case, and then sometimes, you know, if you don't take it personally, you say, okay, well, we're gonna run a suppression to see what the judge says. I think you messed up. You say you didn't mess up. Let's see where the cards fall. But it's definitely it's the bad cops make even the negotiations hard, because you know, and you don't want to call anyone out. Like, I mean, attorneys want to get in, get out. Cops want to get in and get out because they're usually not working. They're either coming in from a midnight turn, it's their day off. You know, it's just one of those things. But you get, every once in a while, like I said, it's 3. I can know 3 of them, and anytime I see that their names, I'm like, there's going to be a problem here. And I mean, I hope one day that there's not a problem, but they don't generally get better with time. I'll say that.
Right.
Okay. So I guess before we move on, we can kind of agree that police officers are good. The bad ones, we got to find ways to get them out. It's not that easy as everyone believes it is, but we could agree that police officers are generally good, and we all want to do our jobs, go home, you know, be peaceful with everybody, and you know, just go home to our families at the end of the day. So,
I mean, I don't think you need to find ways. I think you need to have good police officers being like, I'm tired of this bullshit, and I'm going to stand up. And, I mean, it's going to cause bumps and bruises, and you're going to have to go. But I think if enough people do it, then you flush it out, and, you know,
okay,
tides turn.
absolutely.
Thanks for riding with Cop Talk Uncuffed. If you like the show, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Also subscribe and like our videos on YouTube. Let's partner up again next time. For now, we're out of service.
Bye.